This is Serial Entrepreneur Secrets Revealed. And by the way, we have almost hit 900,000 members. There's my co-moderator, Jeff. I know you, Francine, pretty well. And there's my other co-moderator, Michelle Van Tilburg, and I'm Colin C. Campbell, and you're listening to the Serial Entrepreneur Secrets Revealed. It is a live show on Clubhouse, and it is also on podcast. And if you are listening to this in podcast, we do the show every Friday at 2 o'clock Eastern. So please, if you're interested in coming on stage or joining the live show, you can do that. Anyone can join. You just go to startup.club, or you can actually go to Clubhouse and go to the Startup Club. Join that club and then check out our show every Friday at 2 o'clock Eastern. Wow, Michelle, Jeff, I'm excited about today. It's about Web3. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Cer-
Web3. We've done a few shows around Web3, right? I know we've done this at the third show I think we've done talking about Web3.
Yeah, for me, I'm just trying to learn and absorb what the opportunities are. And I'll tell you, Jeff and Colin, it's been difficult because I keep asking, wow, where should I go? Like, how do I even dip a toe in? How do I even figure out what it is? How do I even experience it? And even that basic level of a question has been a bit challenging. I really haven't gotten any good response. But what I have learned lately, listening to the news, is actually Roblox seems to be the leader, and the engagement is extremely high, and it's mostly with young children. So I'm really interested to hear what Dr. Francine is going to say, because I know she's done a great deal of research on this subject. So I'm just really I'm sitting here with my pen and my paper, and I'm going to take lots of notes, Dr.
Your
Francine.
what?
Yes, I'm going to take notes on what you have to say, because I'm really interested to know, like, how do I even experience this? And we're really interested to know, because some of us are a bit skeptical, I'm going to say, is how do you even understand what Web 3.0 is and what the opportunities are?
Yeah.
Michelle, but you can tell the truth. You're not using a pen and paper. You're using a Remarkable too. So you do have you are up to date with more of a digital platform for that note taking, right? I
Yeah.
Not
think, and
actually, but yeah.
And
So
Dr., it's great to see you as well. And Colin, I think it would be great if we could get Francine to tell us. We were talking before you joined, Francine, about FTX a little bit, and crypto's in the news in a big way. But there's a lot of confusion, I think, between cryptocurrency, blockchain, Web3. How do you cut through all that and understand what are they all? What are the differences? And how do you define Web3?
Hey, Jeff, there really isn't a definition now, and that is part of the problem because there are several pieces that are not yet joined together in any meaningful utility. And I would say that the way that you understand Web3 is to understand the pieces and then just wait for them to come, some brilliant person, or maybe you, to put the pieces together. It's, you said Roblox, Michelle. Um, Roblox, by the way, used to have nothing to do with Web3 and actually really doesn't have anything to do with Web3. Roblox was a children's programming service, a children's programming tool. And it turned out that children loved it and they all learned to code on Roblox. And then adults started making up games on Roblox. And that's how it got so big. But it really doesn't have very much to do with Web3. People, yes, it has its own money. See, all right, let me think where I'm going to start this. This is hard to start. I'm sorry I agreed to do it because I want to make
no,
sure that I get to FTX and what you were talking about before because that is some of the big news. But okay, and also Michelle, to your feelings because I was around during the dot com bust. Okay. Dot-com bust, which occurred in the year 2000, put an end to the first exciting e-commerce companies and internet companies, because when the internet first became accessible, when browsers first became accessible, people started up all kinds of businesses. And what happened was they basically got wiped out in the stock market crash, and all the money went away, and all the public companies, just like it's exactly like FTX, exactly like what's happening. The public companies went away, and it was quite a wipeout. And I think the kind of activity we're seeing now is the same kind of wipeout. And what it does is it clears up the traffic on the 280 and the 101, because all the people who went to Silicon Valley to make a quick buck get fired, or their startups close down, or whatever, and they all go home, or they all go to cheaper places to live, or they just give up. And very few people remain. But you have to remember that for two things. The first thing is that for everything that goes away, there's always one or two that do well. For instance, eBay was founded during that era, and it didn't go away. It continued, and so did Amazon. Amazon was founded during that period. Man, I can remember hearing Jeff Bezos speak. And the thing about Jeff Bezos is that he always believed in sticking around and investing. He doesn't really believe in taking the money and running. So he stuck around, and eventually he built a firm foundation under Amazon and eBay, and also PayPal started at that time. And so, because PayPal started as a way for people to pay eBay sellers. So that was all part of the infrastructure. And while lots of things went away, because, for instance, there were food delivery services, and everybody said, ah, ha, 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 that's ridiculous. But the truth is that although I've forgotten what the first dog food delivery service that went broke was, but there is now an extremely popular dog food delivery service, Chewy.com. But you had to have more structure, and people had to know more about how to run an online business. And that is exactly what the problem is with Web3. Web3 is a terminology, a vague terminology that has no actual meaning other than it is a demarcation in time, marking a difference between itself and Web 2, which was the last era. What was Web 2? Web 2 was social media. And the party line on Web 3 is that the difference between it and Web 2 is that people could own a piece of the rock, so to speak, could own a piece of the business, because all these Web 3 businesses would be decentralized and governed by something called DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. The DAO is a business model. Go ahead, Colin.
Yeah,
Feel
Chuck,
free
I
to.
saw you give a chance to breathe there. Wow, what an intro. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about how, you
I
know,
don't know how I'm going to get through it in an.
you will. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. But what I'd like from the audience, if you have a question or you have an expertise in Web3, please raise your hand. It's Friday afternoon. We like to have fun with this show. The second thing is there's a button right on the bottom there, second to the left. And if you could just share the room on Clubhouse, because I think this is a topic that a lot of people are going to want to listen to. It's all about how do we actually make money from Web3. Francine, as you were talking, it's just fascinating. I've lived that life for 25 years, and I started with a dial-up internet, and then we did a company called Two Cows, which was downloading
Oh, you did
downloadable
two
software.
cows.
I was one of the
Oh,
founders, one of the three founders, yes. And then we did,
company with a very good reputation.
yeah, and they eventually evolved into a domain and they launched a telecom service called Ting. And then after that, in the 2000s, I did the Hostopia, which was a cloud-based hosting and email platform for telecoms, which we sold to AT&T and T and others. And then we did .club, about .club. And then now Michelle, Jeff, and I are running Startup Club. And it's just really been a passion of ours to grab onto these new technologies. So as the internet has evolved, there have been huge opportunities. And I know Jeffrey Moore, who we have had on as a guest on this show, nowhere as good as Francine here, of course.
Blah.
But
Yeah, he was
but he,
around before
yeah, no,
me, man.
correct. Yeah, and he really defined that the different cycles around the chasm.
Still right. And that is what's happening
Correct.
now with Web3. The early adopters still believe in Web3, but they can't describe whether what they believe in is the business model for Web3, which is the decentralized autonomous organization, or the DAO, which provides the funding and also some of the profits, which is one end of it, or the blockchain part of it, which is the infrastructure that keeps things alive forever, or the cryptocurrency, which doesn't really have to be there. Now that now that I've been up and down these roads enough times, I'm not sure that it even needs cryptocurrency. But those are the three pieces.
But
Go ahead, Jeff.
no, I was going to say, I think in my mind, you touched on it earlier, Francine, when you used the word utility. You mentioned utility. And it seems that for many years now, we've heard about blockchain technology, we've heard about cryptocurrency, we've had Bitcoin and all the other different coins that came out, and the rise and fall of ICOs and all this stuff. And it seems like Web3 is actually trying to leverage bits and pieces of those different technologies, including DAOs and everything else, and bringing them into some form where there's actual utility, where you can actually do something with it. Like we're talking about today,
Exactly.
turning your business into Web3, using Web3 to make a business, right?
Exactly. And a lot of people have already tried to do that. Some of them have tried to do it by taking the blockchain piece of it and putting things on the blockchain to provide perfect authenticity and provenance and keeping them alive forever. And then other people have taken the cryptocurrency piece of it, which is the piece of how you raise funds or how you pay for it or how you use a self-sovereign currency. And then the other piece of it, the DAO, a lot of people and companies have formed DAOs, and some are working better than others. But we are in such an incredible era of change and tumult that unless you really understand everything, I don't know where. I've participated in all three pieces. Let me put it that way. I was part of a DAO called Constitution DAO. I'm sure you guys remember that, which was a couple of years ago, a communal effort to buy a copy of the United States Constitution. And that DAO, as a fundraising vehicle, raised something like $45 million dollars in a week from people who believe that the Constitution should be owned by the people. And you made a contribution, and you got your ownership in the same way that you would get your ownership in a regular company, in shares or in pieces of the DAO. And we didn't succeed because a regular financial company, even richer than our little $45 million co-op, came in and beat us out. And but what was really fortunate was that the people who started Constitution DAO were honest and serious. And they promised everybody that if we didn't succeed, they would give us back our money. So that was a DAO that had utility. Okay. It was definitely a Web3 project, but lacked the, the worst of the Web3 features of the last couple of years, which are like rug pulls and taking the money and running and dishonest Ponzi scheme type of stuff. So, very different. They gave us back all of our money. So, my one experience in being part of a DAO was very positive. My experience in buying cryptocurrency, by and large, was also very positive because I got in early on Bitcoin and I got in and out. And the DAO and the cryptocurrency part were great. But the business case wasn't there for me because still now what it is, and it's less that because the early days are over and the regulators are on it. But for me, cryptocurrency was an investment that played pretty well for me from about 2014 on. And so there you are. But,
Yeah, you said, Francine, there was a third one. So you got the DAO and you got the crypto, and you said there was a third one, that
the blockchain.
blockchain that you participated in. Okay, got it.
And I
And what was your experience with
participated
that?
in my experience with the blockchain was that I started the Karma coin, and the Karma coin existed on the Ethereum blockchain. And my experience with Rally and the Karma coin was not so hot because Rally, social token part of Rally failed, but that wasn't Ethereum's fault, and Ethereum's still there, and the blockchain part of it worked well. So all of my experiences have been positive, but then my big takeaway is, would I put an ordinary business into it now? No, because it's not ready. It has these three pieces. I've experienced them all as three separate pieces. I can't think of who has experienced them as one piece that's been successful. Doesn't mean it hasn't happened. It means I don't know. And what I've found about FTX and all these other things is these are not Web3 companies. These are old-fashioned scams.
Yeah, and that's
Exactly.
just repeating back what you said, Dr. Francine. That's what happened in 2002. We had saw the pets.com go under. Jeff, your favorite there. You
Yeah.
always talk about pets.com, and
Everybody
But
talks about
I
pets.com,
know,
but
but
if you
but
think about
but it was the
chewy.com,
beginning. It was the beginning of the emergence of the great internet that became something huge. And is that the case with Web3? It's going through one of those tough times right now.
see, I think so. I really think so. And I'm stuck because the topic I promised you I would talk about is making Web3 a real business. And I don't think you can do it right now. It's hard enough starting a business without trying to deal with an
but
unfamiliar business model and blockchains that are not a lot of blockchains that aren't stable and a lack of regulation, so you don't know, you know, who is going to start the next scam on you.
but
So I don't
but
know.
the but is aren't these things all tools, and just there have been Ponzi schemes for forever, and they just use the latest and greatest technology. So if Web3 and blockchain and crypto is the latest and greatest technology, there are certain people who will figure out ways to do good things with it and bad things with it. So I think the example you gave, though, I think was really informative, Francine, with the Constitution DAO, because they did manage to combine best practices of any business, which is honesty, truth, sticking to the terms of what the deal was supposed to be, but at the same time leveraging some of these new technologies with blockchain and crypto to be able to raise funds to participate in an auction for the copy of the Constitution that even though they
Yes,
didn't win the auction, they had a chance to play only because of these new technologies, but also because they applied proper, sincere business practices to it. So there should be ways, and I'm sure there will be emerging companies that will do the same, that will use the best of old school business, combine it with the new capabilities these technologies bring, and create and invent amazing businesses that we'll be talking about 20 and 30 years from now, just like you're talking about eBay and Amazon today.
yeah, and that's what I believe, Jeff. That is exactly what I believe. I don't I didn't mean to come off disappointed or disillusioned with Web3. I actually had a lot of fun. I learned a lot. I talked to a lot of really intelligent, creative entrepreneurs. I certainly learned about the blockchain and what its potential and its limits are. And I met some really innovative people, mostly artists who have found their audiences through NFTs, which I hadn't even mentioned yet. But I have a lot of NFTs that belong to women artists, marginalized artists, who have taken their art audiences globally by making NFTs and sharing with a wider audience. And I hope they don't get crushed when the regulations come down, because we still have an uncomfortable, unfamiliar regulatory environment around, is an NFT a real work of art, or is it a JPEG, or whatever. So
Yeah.
it's,
So
and in the music industry, it should provide ways for music to be crowdsourced by the musician, and people have shares in songs that they really love, and that business model is coming along also. Fans can really participate in this.
Francine, how you're very good at building communities. I can see that. If there's an artist in the audience or a musician in the audience and they wanted to, and I know NFTs, it's hard to even talk about it right now given everything that's happened, but there is something there and something will eventually emerge, in that.
Exactly.
So you're an
Absolutely.
artist, you create your NFTs. Okay, there's some technical things there. Let's not go there. Let's not worry about the regulations for now. How do they get attention? How do you get people to look at your work? How do you actually make sales?
That is what has proven to be the hardest part. The hardest part, if you already have an audience, you get on Discord or drug of choice. And for Web3, it turns out that it almost always is Discord. I don't really like Discord, and other artists have used Twitter. And you find your audience there and you build it by being really community minded over a long period of time. One of the things that happened, the weaknesses of Web3's original founders, is that I think the hardest part that they couldn't understand is how hard it would be to build attention and get community. And I think it takes a lot longer to build a really good community than anybody thought, because somehow they thought, because Web3 said that community was the difference between it and Web2, that every Web3 project came in with a built-in community. And that turned out to not be true. And so a lot of them were severely shocked by how much work you had to do to build a community. And yeah, you know how you build a community? It's a slog. It is a major slog. You get in early. It's like the communities on Clubhouse. You get in early. You make a tremendous contribution of time, which was easy for me because I am older and I don't have a 9 to 5 job. And I can spend time in rooms basically marketing myself on Clubhouse. Or same, I did the same thing on Twitter. I got on in 2006 and I built an audience just by being there and being the person and not being obnoxious, so that when you got on Twitter, you were recommended to follow me early on. Or if you were looking for people who had knowledge of Silicon Valley, or with Clubhouse, the same thing. If you were looking for a safe person to follow on Clubhouse, that person was me. And I was on suggested user lists before I knew there even were suggested user lists. And then you just have to keep at it. When Clubhouse didn't monetize correctly for creators and everybody streamed off the platform saying, screw you, Clubhouse, you failed us, blah, 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 they forgot to take into account the fact that Clubhouse, too, is a startup. And a startup can't provide those kinds of opportunities that Instagram or YouTube provide. So they got mad at Clubhouse and they went away. And I stayed. And now they're all filtering back because they've tried everything else and it's even harder than Clubhouse because social audio is hard.
It is. And getting to 900,000 members on Startup Club and getting great speakers like you and other moderators who open rooms on the club. It's been
You do it, you have to do it week after week. And truthfully, Ed, when he was first running Startup Club, he just spent 24/7 on Clubhouse growing Startup Club, getting moderators, opening rooms, doing all this kind of stuff. In fact, to the point where you couldn't talk to him about anything
he burnt
else.
out. He really burnt out.
Yes.
I remember that. So that's when Michelle and Jeff and I stepped in to help him out, and he handed the baton, and we're doing our best. But I think that it's going through growing pains. It's like every one of these technologies we talk about, but Jeffrey Moore talks about the chasm.
The
That you're
chasm,
stuck.
that's right.
What we need to do is position ourselves for when the tornado comes, for when the early majority start grabbing on to that technology. And of course,
Yeah,
it depends on
and
where you hook your.
fortunately, Colin,
Yeah,
if you have FOMO, it's easy to position yourself. I've been saved many times in building community by my FOMO. My FOMO brings me to try everything early. And although it has its downsides, it also means that when everyone else comes, I'm already there.
yeah. All right, we have Renee on the stage here. Thank you, Renee, for joining us. We have Dr. Francine Hardaway talking to us about Web3 and running real businesses on Web3. Renee, do you have some expertise or on Web3 or a question to ask Dr. Francine?
I was just going to share a little piece about the business model and Web3, in particular, with what is happening with NFTs right now. I think that there are a lot of people in this space who aren't great business people. There are a lot of creative people who are in that space right now. And so what part of the growing pain that you're seeing is that alone, right? And the business model was built off of royalties, and there are now marketplaces that are not honoring royalties or not requiring royalties. And so it's really upsetting the business model. Another thing that is happening if you launch a project like this that requires royalties, then you need people to sell and you need a constant churn, which is the antithesis of what a traditional business would want. Because you, in a NFT project, you have a limited quantity and you need the royalties in order to have income. This is your business model. And you need churn. So you need people to sell and buy because it's based on trading. Whereas in a traditional business, if you're working in SaaS, for instance, or any sort of recurring revenue model, churn is your enemy. So I think that these two factors colliding is causing a bit of an issue. But the other thing that
I'm laughing, Renee, because a bit of an issue is a major understatement.
I'm trying to stay focused on the bigger things than the issues of the week, because I think there are still going to be lots of those kinds of things. But the other big opportunity that I think is being missed is the wave of what is happening with brands and marketing and how this can support a lot of it. What drew me to this space was there's a wave happening where community driven marketing is it's having a moment and is probably going to surpass buyer driven marketing. So we've moved from post World War II in an age of product driven marketing, and then we moved into sort of the expertise, the trusted expert with the sales driven marketing. And then the internet allowed for buyer driven marketing where the buyer could determine their own journey and come into it and educate themselves. They didn't have to have the expert explain things to them. And what we're seeing now is people really not wanting to have to do all of that work, relying on a new form of trust through their community, right? And this is where reviews and other things have bubbled up in the Web 1, Web 2. And now, if you align yourself with a community of people that think similarly to you, you trust them to make recommendations for things. And I think this is a big piece of Web3 that hasn't completely been unlocked. So, when you look for the business model Achilles heels of this idea of churn and how does that work with scarcity and come out of that trading culture and that crypto trading culture, right? And look for business models that don't rely on that within Web3, because you don't have to have that in order to be success. That just is the business model that exists right now. And then you think about how you can build a tribe and a community that enables community driven marketing for your go to market merchants. You end up being able to create far more demand around a brand. And that's another piece that I think is really missing right now is most of these are launched as projects. Dr. Francine mentioned artists and musicians. It was a project to them. And when people see things as a project, they don't feel invested because doesn't feel long term. When these mature into brands and people feel like they will be around for the long term, which is another piece of the growing pains of people saying that
Well,
people
like
vanished after they launched things. So
Dapper
what
Labs or Yugo.
some are, right? So when they emerge from project to brand, people feel that there will be more of a lifespan of these things. So those are the top three things that I would say are really converging right now and creating so much chaos.
I think, Renee, it's interesting you bring that up. And I think when you go into the marketing side of it, when you're talking about going from projects to brands, it's really going from campaigns to relationships, right? Where a lot of things were thought of as a campaign versus as we get into more of that social selling and dealing with influencers, brands make the mistake of treating influencer marketing as a campaign when in fact it needs to be a long-term relationship. And I think one of the pieces that NFTs, for example, there are some good examples where I understand the churn issue, and it's a great point. But outside of churn, there's this idea of using the NFT as a representation of membership, right? So there have been a lot of experiments with even restaurants or clubs or parties and events where the only way you had access was if you were a holder of the NFT. And what's also interesting about that is it's still a tradable asset or commodity so that you could pass along that membership a lot easier than you can today with other clubs, right? If I'm a member of a country club, I can't just very easily hand off my membership to someone else. But with these NFT type membership situations, in theory, you could. Whoever holds the
Well, you
ownership.
can because there is one utility token that's a membership organization called Recur, and Recur is more of a brand than a project. And I can sell my Recur pass entitles me to other NFT drops or whatever, and also I can sell my Recur pass to somebody else, and the Recur pass itself can go up in value. So that is a case where something is increasing in value. But the
But it's
whole,
increasing based on real utility, not based on speculation.
and that's where I think the NFTs are going to come back. They're going to come back as utility NFTs. And really, Clubhouse is in the process of releasing. And I hate to use Clubhouse as an example so many times, but I've been watching Clubhouse develop since it very first began. And I've watched it pivot and change. Is going to token gate some rooms, and that's going to make the creation of utility tokens on Clubhouse take off. So we're really in
So
the early
Francine,
days of
you cut
every.
out for a minute there. You said they're going to tokenize
They're going to token
rooms.
gate rooms. They've already
How's that work?
released token gated rooms. To get in, you need a token. You need
They
a
have
you.
they have token gated houses. So right now, if you were to purchase the CH WAGME token and you connect your wallet, and they use Plaid for the connection. If you connect your wallet and it's in one of the releases, you can go to your settings to do that and have that token, you would automatically be admitted into that house. So there are a couple other people who communities that already have tokens. They've connected in, but that's the only one I know of that you could go purchase into right now.
I have actually tried to connect my wallet. They're just beta testing everything. So I've tried FOMO Girl here. I've tried to connect my wallet and I haven't been able to do so yet. But I'm going to keep trying because every time I know this is their strategy, and it is a way they're going to make it possible for creators to monetize. And so I am going to keep trying, and eventually I'll get my wallet connected, and then I'll come back and report to you what I am able to buy or not buy.
They
France, your next creator coin is going to have to be $ FOMO. Forget
Oh,
karma.
yeah, that's funny, but true.
they've also tested as a test, but also as a little thank you fun. They created a token and airdropped it to the first 100 people who connected their wallet to
And
Clubhouse.
that's
And
why I
that
tried, Renee. That's exactly what.
it doesn't do anything right now. It's all a test. It is nice to watch it emerge, to just be a part of it, to think about. I look at it for business uses, but the other thing I just wanted to point out with the NFTs is there is another form of NFT where you can have a soul-bound token, which is married to that wallet and is not traded. Those would I would from a marketing point of view, from a brand point of view, I equate those, for instance, to your most loyal fans. And there are business models that help you emerge out of that, like trading culture, and where you can confirm who would be your members for utility and other things like that. And those are if I understand it correctly, those are relative, like less than 6 months old, where those types of contracts are emerging. So it is an exciting time to
It's
be
for
thinking about.
mostly musicians have been using them. Renee, you have just illustrated one of my big points. I know I've been on stages with you before, and I know that you've been involved in Web3 for a very long time, and that you, in your day job, you are a brand marketer, and you are doing exactly what you're supposed to do to benefit from new trends. You get there early and you learn as much as you can, and then you stay in the community, and eventually that has a business purpose for you. I just know it will
I
because
like
you're
it.
very knowledgeable.
I like it. I think that's good advice for all of us. We have Natalie on the stage as well. I think you're a bit of an NFT expert, Natalie. Do you have some thoughts about this whole Web3 and how we can actually make money from it?
I don't know that anybody is an expert in Web3. I've been in the space crypto much longer, but NFTs and all that in the beginning. Sorry, somebody's at my window, which is weird. Oh, that's my lawn guy. Sorry.
But you have been around NFT. You too have been in rooms that I've been in, and we've all been learning together. And I think what we should be saying, and you brought it up, is there are no experts in Web3, period.
And if anybody says that, I would encourage you to run. My main issue with the token gating on Clubhouse and that kind of the kind of frameworks that they're trying to push forward in Clubhouse is that those of us who have been, I don't, if I named all the names, we'd be here till like next November. But there are a lot of people that help craft and cultivate and nurture the community around Web3 and NFTs and a little bit of DAO stuff. And the DAO stuff was mostly on Twitter, but in Discord and those spaces. But Clubhouse mainly did not pay attention to those of us who were building the culture here on Clubhouse and onboarding. Like literally, we were up for 2 or 3 days sometimes. Not healthy, and I don't 1-star Yelp review for that. But I just find it very, I'm just gonna be frank here, like problematic and also very that Clubhouse is going this route without even including those of us who they didn't pump our rooms and like we weren't asking for that. However, it's just very funny and the juxtaposition is quite interesting. And I'll land here. My last point is that a lot of people are asking like how do they make money in Web3? What you really should be asking is how I build genuine community and how I nurture those communities. How do I really rethink how and reimagine, hopefully through a radical lens, doing business in Web3? Because some of the frameworks that we built in the traditional business world, whatever that means these days, don't necessarily work in Web3. Some of them don't. Some of them are actually quite counter to the ethos here. Some of them are counter to what we hopefully collectively believe and what we're trying to build here. And so how do we make space for people to come into like Web3, but also those same people like onboarded to the actual culture of crypto and Web3 instead of porting some of the business models that are, let's be frank here, like very extractive and problematic. And so I think there's so many ways people can live their best lives, as I say, in Web3. However, that takes sometimes a little rethinking and retooling in our own brains, how we want to exist here and how we want to coexist with other people, because this space is all about community, all about connecting with others, all about nurturing each other. I'm not saying that, and if you're just looking at the surface level of this space, you're going to get some very interesting folks and people. And I'm just encouraging people to dig deeper and really rethink how they want to do business and how they can actually not build customer bases, but build community bases, and thus empowering people to really get involved in your business and get involved in participating. And so we become participants and not just consumers or customers. And so I just want to encourage people to go a little bit deeper and really rethink how they exist here. That is it.
Go, Natalie. I've seen you also, and I've heard your advocacy before. And I know that you have really tried to create a community on Clubhouse around Web3.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, it's really good advice. I mean, this whole idea we have to learn, find the opportunity, and then seize the day. Any thoughts, Andre? Any questions for anyone on the stage, including Dr. Francine Hardaway, in regards to Web3 or an experience or idea you have of how to make money on Web3?
Hi, everyone. No, I just want to thank you. It's been a really interesting conversation. I think, they are very interesting times. Things are changing fast. The blockchain implementation is changing now with the proof of stake changes versus the proof of work. The cost of writing smart contracts and executing them is much, much faster than before. So we're going to be able to do things much faster now and write blockchain apps that do more. I think companies shouldn't be targeting that much at like making like trying to make like that much of a profit right now. Like basically, these are times to work on proof of concepts and set the grounds for the future, and then worry about like profits.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. I think the proof of stake was a big innovation because I think the environmental impact of the cryptocurrencies was it's pretty damaging on the platform. And I know that it uses like 1/100th of the amount of power versus proof of work. Did I get that right or did I get that backwards, Doctor?
No,
Yeah,
that's
that's
right. But
right. I mean, now it's like 99.5% faster and less energy consuming.
so you have to beat down the objections of the old guard because they're not going to go down without a fight. There's a lot of entrenched models and money in the old guard, and Ethereum proof of stake was really the first step in helping everybody be able to use the blockchain without fighting the environmental concerns that everyone threw up. Now they're, of course, going to throw up the fraud concerns. but we can make them go away also if we, as Natalie said, really focus on building communities where we know each other and where the effort is cooperative, not win-lose.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I know, Daniel, you got some expertise. Welcome back on stage. It's really nice to see you again. What are your thoughts on Web3, or do you have a question here for anyone on the stage?
Humbling words, they might be called an expertise. Wow, I haven't heard that in a while. I've been listening to what Natalie has said and Andreas, and one thing that came to my thought with Natalie, and I really agree with her, is that it's important to build community and use that and build an ecosystem. It's better to do that than only to think about the end goal of the kaching. Especially, this is what I've noticed through the DAO that I'm a part of, the ecosystem that I'm actually building with other people, with a community, because I'm actually doing it at the moment, literally. And what I've seen is the importance of actually giving importance to other people and working together. Now that we're transitioning into a Web3 environment in which we have that ownership, that we can have that sovereignty and work together, it's so important for us to gather that and be more cooperative, use these tools and just move forward step by step. And that's me, I'm complete. Thank you, Colin, and thank you everyone for allowing me on stage.
And I think it's worth noting, Colin, just not to get people sidetracked on the money making thing. The room is titled Making Web3 a Real Business. And we're not necessarily focusing on the money making, but focusing on really trying to find utility and ways to use these technologies to actually do something that provides value to the people participating.
And in my humble opinion, somebody who really impeded that progress was Andreessen Horowitz, because they threw piles of money at some of these projects and companies before they were ready for it and before they could deploy it. And this is what I noticed during Web 1 also, that when you give an entrepreneur who is really trying to do something different too much money, it doesn't help. It attracts the wrong team players. It attracts the wrong ethos. It's not the right thing to do. It's better not to throw a ton of money into startup companies. It doesn't necessarily help them grow better.
You,
And I think Andreessen Horowitz, they didn't ruin Web3 because it is going to happen. And I think their faith in it is well placed. But I think that when you give companies $125 million before they even have a proof of concept, that just is always misspent.
Yeah. Too much money too soon allows you to skip a lot of the learning stages. It's if someone handed you a supercar, a McLaren or Ferrari, the very first time you learned to drive when you were 15 or 16 years old, there's a good chance you're going to crash it because you didn't have the learning stages of going from slower vehicles to faster vehicles.
Yeah, I think I call it Silicon Valley disease. I've nicknamed it that in the book, the upcoming book, Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat, that will be out in March. I've seen it too often. And what's unfortunate about that is the entrepreneur usually walks away with nothing. Even if they can get some residual value for the company, all that money will go to the venture
Well,
capitalists. And
they used to walk away with nothing. The whole model has changed now to where they also can get taken out earlier. And that is another discouragement to true innovation. So that they actually should walk away with just the learnings, but many of them don't recently. I don't know how. The only one I know is Clubhouse. When A16Z funded Clubhouse, it took out Paul and Rohan. They didn't get what they hoped they're going to get at the end of the day, but they received a sum of money each way before they knew whether the company was going to be a success or not.
this has been a fascinating hour. We have 5 minutes left. I don't know if there's any last comments from anyone on the panel here. Somebody wants to learn more about Web3, where do they go? What would be their first thing they should do? Is there an actual club on Web3 on Clubhouse? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I have some thoughts, but I'm sure Natalie and Renee have more. There's a Web3 reading club I'm sorry, a Web3 reading house that is run by, it's very hard now to know the difference between the clubs and the houses and say it correctly, but there is a Web3 reading house for people who are interested in Web3. And they literally are reading articles and books and so on. And Natalie, do you have a club?
I don't have a club. I'm in everybody else's club. You can mostly see me hanging out in neighborhood jewelry or blockchain gospel. I got the red bar. So I'm mostly there.
And Renee?
I was just going to mention that I popped into this room while I was getting some work done because I feel like there aren't enough public spaces talking about this, and that's how I learned about this, was on Clubhouse, and learned all about NFTs in early 2021. And I popped in to just share a thought and listen a little, because there's not enough happening in public spaces right now. As someone mentioned earlier, so much is in the discords, so much is in these already existing communities, that if you don't know, you don't know. I just, as much as anybody who does know can jump into public spaces, and that are not all Twitter spaces, because not everybody's over there.
There's a content creator called The Rundown on Clubhouse who used to have public rooms all the time and taught people about cryptocurrency and issued an NFT called Little Hippo. And I don't know what happened to him because his rooms were fascinating and taught me a lot. But I think people accused him of doing a rug pull with Little Hippo because people didn't really understand how long it takes to actually build community.
I just wanted to share that it's really nice to see something happening in the public space, and as much as people still keep some of this in the public space, that it helps more people enter the ecosystem, which is the healthiest thing for it all.
I think it's been great that we have an opportunity to talk about these new technologies and how entrepreneurs and how startups and founders can think of ways to make money and start their businesses, because I've seen it happen over and over again, from the dial-up internet to broadband to social to the blockchain. It's over and over again. There has been opportunities, and there's a time and a place when it becomes the early majority grabs onto it, and there's big rewards for the entrepreneurs. Thank you very much again, Dr. Francine Hardaway, and I'd love to have you back on other shows in the future. And everyone else on stage here, I got the opportunity to follow each of you. If I hadn't already been following you, there's a couple you hadn't been following, especially you. I think I just started following you, Natalie, as well. Thanks again, Renee and Andre and Daniel. So that was a great show. Now, let me tell you something. We do have something really exciting to announce. We have a best-selling author, Mark Sharon Bridge, who's coming on to our show next Friday at 2 o'clock Eastern. He's written a number of bestsellers, including Nice Bike, and it's all about how to build sustainable relationships and customers. What we were talking about today, right? Actually, how to build a relationship or a rapport with customers so that you can close more deals. I think that's part of the equation. That's part of what we're trying to do here on this
But you
live
have to
show.
change, but you have to change the vocabulary. I don't see, because that whole close more deals thing is very old school, because it doesn't necessarily presuppose abundance, and because it doesn't carry through with the community metaphor. And Renee and Natalie, I don't know what you guys would think of
All
this,
right,
but
I
I
do
think,
want to close. Yeah, we have to close the show right now,
sorry.
but I don't want to go into a discussion or debate about whether or not it does actually help you close deals, though. And I know where you're coming from. It's about building a community first, and then from there, the deals will flow. I think what we're talking about is a little bit different with Mark Sharon Bridge, that he's developed methods where he can help entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs like myself, who are not as social as you, Francine, who can't necessarily build that rapport, but he's got some pretty good techniques to help us do that. And he's going to be on next Friday at 2 o'clock Eastern on the Serial Entrepreneur Secrets Revealed podcast and live show. Thank you very much again, Francine, and everyone else on stage. We'll see you again next Friday at 2 o'clock Eastern.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone. Good to
Thank
see you,
you.
Francine.